So the first thing we're going to do, I'm going to throw out a cold question to you. Cold meaning you have no prep for it. And it's just to see if you can kind of guess at the meaning of this term.
Hello, I'm Rebecca Feldbusch. I teach secondary English language arts, and I have been teaching for 10 years.
All right, share with the person sitting across from you, or in a group of three, what you wrote for your response.
I feel like I was born with this ability to close read. I'm a very slow reader, and I let my students know that. I think that's probably one of the keys to being a good close reader is to taking your time with the text. And not everything is meant to be read closely, but good literature should be read closely. And I look at it as kind of an interaction with the text. You're wondering, why did the author use that word to describe this? Why is this character depicted in this way? Why do I feel this way when I read this particular passage? It's a lot of whys, a lot of why questioning and questioning the author. And obviously you can't ask the author, especially if it's a deceased author, but a lot of times those questions get answered as you read or reread. So close reading usually involves some amount of rereading and a lot of questioning of the text.
Okay, how many of you think that your partner had a pretty good answer? Super, super. All right. Gabby, what did your partner say? You can borrow her paper.
I think it means to close read is that you read a story closely and look at the way the author uses to draw you in and other details that you might not notice when you're just reading for fun. Concentrate on the story and why the author wrote it or what it's about, and similes and other details like those.
Okay.
And it said that I think that close reading is when you read something but you don't read it, but you read it very carefully. Also, I think close reading is writing thoughts about what you read, and I really like how he said writing thoughts.
Writing thoughts.
So I think kids need to do the close reading with the guidance of a teacher, especially if they're just used to reading books that aren't that in-depth. But I try to just teach kids, you're questioning the author and you're questioning the text with a lot of whys.
The relationship to the end. So these are very similar to the things that we call close reading. Looking for details. It's not just for fun, although it can be fun. So it's a more serious way of reading. And I like this too. Lauren said writing down your thoughts. Because when you're close reading, you often have to annotate. Have you heard the word annotate before? Okay. Okay. You never heard it before me, though? Okay. Annotate is writing your thoughts as you're reading. That's all it is. He might have. He might have. It could be questioning why. Looking at things closely, critiquing, and trying to find out the author's intent. When you close read, you should always write your thoughts somewhere. Now, so when we're close reading, we often have to reread something. It's kind of difficult to do a close reading of something the first time you read it. Poetry always needs to be closely read because it's usually not as straightforward as a short story or a novel.
I think you want to make something that's challenging but accessible. And that's tough. And I think poetry is a good step to teaching close reading because kids will moan and groan and because they all say they don't like poetry, or most of them say they don't like poetry. And then they start breaking open a poem and doing that close reading, and they realize, wow, I hadn't realized there was so much to it, there's so much more than I had previously thought.
But we are looking for setting and tone. While Ma and Daddy slept, the dust came, tearing up the fields where the winter wheat, set for harvest in June, stood helpless. I watched the plants surviving after so much drought and so much wind. I watched them fry or flatten. Now, you might not be able to see this, but you can see it in your books. Or blow away like bits of cast-off rags. Now, I underlined that section because I think it answers one of those questions. How do Hess's words and phrases establish the setting and tone? The dust came up, tearing up fields where the winter wheat, set for harvest in June, stood helpless. I underlined that section. I thought that sort of addressed one of those things, setting or tone. Which do you think I might be addressing? What do you think, Katie?
The setting, because there's only two ways to break down.
Okay, it does establish the setting for sure. But it also establishes, Elizabeth? Yeah, there we go. You are right, Katie. It does give you that winter wheat. The setting is the time, winter, the wheat that's supposed to grow. But this word helpless is just definitely, when you think about wheat growing, you don't think helpless. But in this situation, because it's being torn up by the dust and the wind, they feel helpless to stop it. It's not, oh, great, the wheat is growing. Oh, big deal, the wheat is growing. Oh, hooray, the wheat is growing. Oh, it's, oh my goodness, our wheat is gone. And there's nothing we can do about it.
Mrs. Feldbusch is walking her talk, modeling close reading so her students can see her thought processes as she's studying the text. This is how students learn what it takes to analyze literature. Next, we'll transition to Mrs. Feldbusch's 7th grade class, where she demonstrates that close reading and text-dependent analysis can also be done with graphic novels.
Jacob, could you read this little half sheet for us?
Sure. March, Book 1, Graphic Novel Analysis. Choose one page from the book and analyze the images, words, and the way they are represented using at least 3 terms from the graphic novel terminology sheet. FCAs. Use at least 3 of the 16 graphic novel terms to describe and analyze what is going on in the scene or scenes as 6 points. Your analysis of why you think the author/artist chose to represent the images and words in that way, which is 7 points, and at least 9 sentences, no repetitive ones such as, that is why I think the author chose to represent the image is in that way, and 2 points.
Okay, so I don't want any of those repetitive sentences because you think, okay, that's my 9th sentence, boom, and boom, it's not your 9th sentence. Don't even use it. It's a waste of a space. Okay, so total of 15 points. I attached mine. You do not need to look at it right now, but I'm going to show you the page that I used. So when you go to present, you get to come up here and use my Elmo, my document cam, and, well, actually, I'll use the document cam, and you can stand up there and look at it. So I've chosen a page that I thought most people wouldn't choose.
I think I'll just say we're reading a pairing something with nonfiction, and it's a pretty dense nonfiction. And for instance, when my kids are reading some text, 7th graders are reading some text set in the 1960s era, and there's a lot of war protests, so I give them an article about Vietnam and the Vietnam War, and I have them read that closely, and it's sort of like a close reading and text rendering where they ask a lot of questions or have make comments, and that's important for them because what one kid questions, another kid might not think to question, and so when we bring it up in the whole class discussion, I think it is useful just for an overall understanding and getting multiple perspectives of an issue. So that's one way. If it's fiction, like poetry has to be read more than once. And so the first might be just listening to the poem. How does it sound? What are some of the feelings that it evokes? And then a second reading might be a more close reading, looking at word choice and some of the symbolism or metaphors, figurative language. Perhaps then the third reading might be more looking at questions of what is happening, what is the purpose. So it depends on the text, how many times you want to go back and reread. It might be just a sentence. But it is important for close reading to have multiple readings of different sections.
This is mine reading, and you can read along if you would like. The graphic novel March, Book 1, represents the civil rights activist John Lewis in creative and interesting ways. Just a simple topic sentence. On page 27, the first thing we see is the voiceover at the top of the page. Voiceover. And 6 other places on the page which show Lewis is speaking to the people in his office about his childhood. In the voiceover, he speaks about how he practiced preaching to the chickens. And it helps develop the character of Lewis as a boy who was devoted to God and his chickens and portrays his innocence. So not only am I saying, yes, there is voiceover, I'm saying how it has contributed to the novel or the character in some way. Okay? Secondly, the graphic weight of the page leans mostly towards the dark, since the preaching is taking place at night. The placement of the words, "Behold the Lamb of God, which taketh away the sins of the world," is another example of the sharp contrast between black and white. So you have this image of him, black, reading the Bible, and this is the words that he's reading, and they're on top of him like that. So it's a sharp contrast. This helps to show that the message that the words represent have become so important to Lewis that they are actually a part of him. You know, why did the author decide to put them on Lewis? Because they are a part of him. It's such a part of his life. This book has many visual representations that help the reader to gain a deeper understanding of the book. No questions? Okay, so I'm going to let you read now, and just bear in mind that you're going to have to do that with one of these pages. You can't use the same page that I used. That's the only thing. You can't use the same page that I used. I think that would make it difficult to try to figure out something different to say. You can use the same page as someone else, so it's not like a first come, first serve kind of thing. But it is a choose what you think is compelling and 3 terms that you can elaborate on.
The beginning of page 90 starts with the direct speech bubbles showing formal talk. Then at the end, the long skinny line connects the speech bubbles, showing the person is talking gently. At the end, there is also a voiceover explaining the time of which they are doing consider.
The graphic weight of the pages leans mostly towards the darker side of things. It is highlighted by big speech bubbles that are written in white. The contrast makes the page seem important to the topic of the book, and it is. It also makes the words seem more important than anything else on the page.
On pages 114, the first thing we see is the graphic weight on the large image of the phone that is ringing. This makes the phone have a dramatic look to it, and this tells me that the phone is somehow important, and that something important is actually going to happen that includes this phone.
I'm blown away by the depth of analysis these 7th graders are able to produce. They've clearly studied their pages and asked themselves a lot of questions about both the author's and artist's choices and intentions. Again, Mrs. Feldbusch's model was a key piece of scaffolding here. She also did a wonderful job of pairing a properly sized piece of text to an appropriately challenging task. This is exactly how close reading should be taught.